Hello everyone, I would like to make a confession. I have committed a grave crime, and that was that I slept on My Hero Academia. The last time I made a video related to this story was when I reviewed chapter 153. For reference, that chapter ended with Chisaki fusing with his minions to become General Grease integration. I honestly don't know why I haven't made another My Hero video since. I never lost interest in the series. In fact, I've enjoyed it more and more as the story progressed. I would dare say that in terms of this year, 2020, I have enjoyed My Hero far more than even the Shonen Titan One Piece, and that's my YouTube jam! The reason I had this channel in the first place. My Hero has been on a constant climb in terms of quality. By the way, I am talking about the manga in this scenario. The anime, much like any of its kind, have different levels of quality. But in terms of the manga, the art has gotten more detailed, characters have gotten more development, the writing has been consistently good, Shigaraki is now a complete villain and character to the point where I have dropped any doubt in my mind about his plans or motivation, and also, without giving spoilers for now, let's just say the story, as of this moment, is in the middle of a crisis. It's headed into a direction that I don't know where it can go, but in a great way. That's very refreshing. A common complaint about superhero stories is that they can be quite predictable, but hey, I'm giving credit where credit is due. Round of applause to My Hero and its author, Mr. Horikoshi. So what is the purpose of this video series I'm doing? Well, basically, I want to recap chapters 154 through the latest chapter whenever I technically catch up to it. Now, I won't be doing a play-by-play for these arcs, that would take far too long! Instead, I want to go over any pros and cons I had with these arcs. Think of this series as one of those here's what I missed videos where I catch up to everyone so that I'm prepared to talk about My Hero more in the future. That way, if I ever did a review on chapter 350 or something, people won't suddenly ask, wait a second, what happened with you between then and 200 chapters ago? So that's where we're at. I want to also make clear that my opinions for this video series are on a subjective level. I say this because I don't want to confuse anyone into thinking that what I say at all times on here is to be taken at objective value. If I were to do that, I would throw out this whole script and call these videos reviews. I would rather sum up my personal experiences first, and then if I ever found reason to review these arcs properly. Finally, and hopefully this was obvious, but gonna say right now, spoilers! That's all I'm gonna say. Spoilers. I don't want to ruin this series for anyone before they begin, or if they had any interest in it beforehand. So, yeah. That's the intro. So let's begin by wrapping up my feelings on the fight against Chisaki. In retrospect, I think this whole arc was what convinced me that My Hero could make it to the top. In terms of moments, I think All Might vs. All for One is my favorite, but in terms of arcs, this arc solidified this story's place. One could say that this was My Hero's Chunin exam, or Namek Saga. So the finale of this arc focuses on Deku and Night-Eye versus Chisaki. Thankfully, neither of these scuffles ever drag on. The battles were even shorter than what I remembered. I think it's because the story was also trying to focus on the rescue part of this arc. Fighting Chisaki's inevitable, but hey, we have to save Eri too. She's the top priority and Chisaki happens to be the roadblock. So when Eri uses Lemillion's cave so that Deku can grab on and pull her away, that was such a fist bump moment. I even felt like yelling, "Mission complete!" Unfortunately, we still have Overhaul to deal with. But that's when Deku gets a power-up that's not forced. It doesn't have to do with emotions or secretly discovering Super One for All, and there's no sign of plot armor. Eri's power is revealed to be that of rewinding. Chisaki used that power to make his quirk erasing bullets. Eri is the golden egg for Chisaki, but is treated like Pandora's box. Eri is this victim that has been the textbook definition of disposable. Chisaki's power and resources are only used to endlessly torture this girl. There was no hope left for her, and that was perfectly understandable. But grabbing onto Deku, the latter actually calls Eri's power a blessing, and asks her to use that power. And that's the difference between our hero and villain. Chisaki forced decisions, Deku requested them. So with Eri rewinding Deku's damaged body from going 100%, Deku can go all out. It's not that long of a fight, but it's not supposed to be. This is Deku going wild to put one of the most powerful quirk users in the series down for good. The few blows Deku have are devastating. And during all of this, we have Night-Eye on the ground going, oh shit, the future can be changed. I'll go back to Night-Eye later, but yeah, this was a complete victory for Deku. I also like how Eri doesn't know how to stop her power. Deku knows about power control all too well, and it's part of why their bond worked for that one fight. But there's consequences. There's a reason why Eri is feared, why she's dangerous, but thankfully Eraserhead turns her power off and the arc is just about over. The end into this arc is bittersweet for two reasons. The first is, of course, Night-Eye. I thought his death was handled in a very appropriate manner. It wasn't dragged out, and it felt like a mature goodbye from All Might and Night-Eye. There's even a really nice touch at the end where Night-Eye, not afraid to look ahead, peers into Mirio's future and says everything will be fine and to keep smiling. That indirectly helped Mirio move past his grief too, because in the next chapter, Mirio holds true to that promise and doesn't want to shed any more tears. Mirio is one of my favorite characters in My Hero Academia because he acts like a human being. He is what a greatly written superhero should be like. Charismatic, but can still handle serious topics in his own unique way. Hell, he even refused taking Deku's quirk for himself because he knows that would only cause Deku pain. It wouldn't be worth it. You do you, Mirio. Now, for the second reason we had a bittersweet ending, and that was Shigaraki making his next move as a villain. He tracks down Chisaki and shows how much of a hypocrite the latter is. A man that wants to destroy quirks is too reliant on his quirk himself. That this man supposedly hates getting messy, yet all he wants to do is destroy is wreaked in hypocrisy. Shigaraki then gloats about how everything Chisaki worked for is now his, and declares it's his time. At the same time, we also have Gigantomachia's first introduction. It was creepy, full of intrigue, and full of hype, since this monster is considered a backup plan if All for One ever failed. We'll get to Machia later, but that was the remainder of the arc I failed to follow up on. Overall, I enjoyed it quite a bit. If I had any complaints, I was honestly hoping that one of the other heroes bit the bullet too. Sun Eater had his face slashed, Rocklock was surprise stabbed by fucking Toga. I can understand it, the only death was Night-Eye so that he could have more focus, but unfortunately, both Sun Eater and Rocklock were set up in situations where they could easily die and yet still benefit the story. It would help sell the severity of this rescue operation, but hey, to each their own. There's also the fact that Chrono felt completely useless in the story. If you don't remember who he is, he's the guy that takes Eraserhead away and then he gets arrested and then that's it.
You did it, good job. I can't believe it, I'm proud of you.
The only other complaint I have is Night-Eye's line about Deku changing the future. He says that it happened because everyone's energy focused into Deku and that allowed him to change the future. I'm sorry, but that seems way too cheesy and a tad dumb. Deku isn't some spirit bomb. As far as everyone else was concerned, he was just another kid helping out the pros. He wasn't even recognized until after the battle. Why not have Deku take the credit for changing the future himself because of his conviction? That shouldn't be too hard, but nope! Everyone just focused on the mission so hard, energy went into Deku to break fate. I would rather believe an episode of Ghost Adventures than this explanation. But hey, we did it! 1/4 of an arc down, but since the next technical story arc isn't that long, let's talk about that too before cutting off the video. So let's talk about the remedial chorus arc. Right out of the gate, I want to admit that I didn't like this arc at first read. It followed in the footsteps of Deku vs Chisaki, Mirio as a whole, Shigaraki's ominous climb. Honestly, if we were to keep the tone from the ending of the last arc, then we should have just gone to the League of Villains arc, but we'll get there soon enough. Let's focus on a mistake I made, and that was not understanding how strong the writing for this story was. Horikoshi practically made a summer school babysitting job into a well-constructed character development arc, and the focus of said development was on Bakugo, Todoroki, and Inasa. That should have been one of those moments where the stars and planets don't align, nothing is in place, the lights of the heavens dim, and Disney announces an end to live-action failures. By all accounts, this should not have worked, but by the holy mother of Hades, it did. Let's start with the pros, and there are several. Immediately starting was the reaction Class 1A had to the return of Deku, Uraraka, Sue, and Kirishima. The bonds this class have with each other is great. Ida trying to be the big brother, Ashido checking in on Kirishima, everyone else showing concern, and Deku remembering Night-Eye's message to keep going in a positive light. Love it. We also see Uraraka figure out what she wants to do as a hero. I mean, she still wants to provide money for her family, but her area of expertise wants to be on rescue because she was the one that held on to a dying Night Eye. He was in her care when the fatal blow was done, and she felt responsible, like she could have done something more. But then you have Eraserhead helping her cope, and it's a great human moment. I honestly don't understand where the hate for Uraraka comes from. I think she's a good character. Next up on the pros is All Might and Endeavor's conversation. Actually, let's just put Endeavor on here as a whole. While the talk between the top heroes is great for looking into motivations, Endeavor acknowledging his shortcomings and not so high public love is a good step for him to take, I also appreciate how Endeavor recognizing his faults doesn't forgive him for all the cruel shit he did in his past, as seen with his son Shoto. You'll never see me list Endeavor as a favorite character of mine. I still think he's a scumbag for everything he did to his family, and he deserves what's coming to him. That being said, not liking his character while appreciating the writing of said character are two different things. It would be so easy to simply keep Endeavor as a piece of shit. However, I applaud Horikoshi's efforts to try and improve Endeavor's personal life, to have him slowly build his life to one that is healthy and overall happy. Seeing a character try to overcome his sins is one that's always enticing to me. You may have gotten a hint of it already, but I'm a sucker for characters that act like humans instead of being one-note gags or gimmicks. The human characters offer so much potential for a story no matter what side of morality they're on, so they are always a treat to see. Going back to a more positive light is one of the most positive people in the My Hero universe, and that's Inasa. I don't know what the general opinion of Inasa is, but I like him. I like his over-the-top positive spin on everything. He reminds me of a cousin I have, where she's one of the most positive people I know. I mean, she doesn't headbutt the ground, but the personality is there. We'll get to his interactions with the kids later, but I want to quickly highlight Inasa's ending in this arc. After passing the class, Inasa connects more with Todoroki, and the two of them, while having nothing in common, are taking baby steps to a legit friendship. Opposites attract after all. I also like how Todoroki is trying to be more open. We see it during their training session, but his interactions with his peers, especially in comparison to where he started out as a character, is a stark difference. Oh, and before I forget about Inasa, he finally gets his moment with Endeavor! On the surface, it's just a casual meet and greet, but to Inasa, it's a payoff after years of an emotional strain. I had a giant grin on my face seeing Inasa get a happy ending. I hope we get more of him in the future. Now, considering I just talked about how most of the cast in this arc got character development, I should naturally wrap it up by talking about Bakugo, right? Well, let's save him for a little later. Don't worry, he's not on the cons list. He'll just fit better with the arc message as a whole. That, and I can feel the sheer anger Watkins has against me for stalling any positive talk about his baby boy. And I must say, it's delicious. Anyway, on to the remedial course itself. The challenge is to tame a group of children so that they follow in the footsteps of heroes rather than use their powers for selfish reasons, aka don't be a dick. Now that is a really cool detail for world building. Before this, I never really thought about how kids with quirks would learn to control themselves, how to learn about morality. True, there's schools and families and pro heroes to act as role models, but that line of thinking only goes so far. In this arc, we see how dangerous and yet important it is to make sure that the next generation of potential heroes are set on the right path. On the flip side, it also challenges any would-be heroes how to connect to others and be heroes with heart rather than just some public powerhouses. In a way, it's like a class on how to be like All Might. His quirk was one of, if not the strongest quirk ever seen, but he didn't become number one by powering through crooks. He connected to everyone in need and inspired those who would simply look at him. All Might himself conveys that message to Endeavor, and it looks like Endeavor is learning the same lesson as his son right now. So that's where the lesson is learned. How would extremely powerful teenagers with emotional problems connect with kids and prove themselves heroes? While it takes a while, the group eventually realizes that they can connect with these troublesome kids because, well, they too were troublemakers. That was the whole reason they had to take this course in the first place, and the character that drove that lesson home was Bakugo. Before Bakugo's fight and breakdown with Deku, I didn't give a shit about him. I didn't even like the Raiden done with him either. Look everyone, a dick! But oh look, the dick happens to be right at every turn. I guess he can have some of that plot armor too, to make sure that he can go through his life as a main character. Which, by the way, made this panel of Gan Orca yeeting him out of existence a 20 out of 10. But ever since Bakugo's acceptance with All Might and his actions in this arc, I can finally see a light at the end of the tunnel for this character. He will always be a dick, but he's open to learning things now and can actually have a heart. As seen here, connecting with the most pompous child of the class, if you keep looking down at everyone, you'll never notice your own weaknesses. What a great line. I never thought I would see some really solid character development with Bakugo right after his last big moment. Which is surprising because Bakugo didn't have a presence in the Rescue Area arc. We went from this immediately to this. Well played, Horikoshi. Well played. The only other thing I wanted to talk about was this little nod to the phrase that the new generation will surpass the old. In the world of My Hero, that's a literal fact. Apparently, quirk users evolve as generations go by, which has a universal theory about a fucking doomsday scenario. And you know what? That makes sense in Universe, and that's a legitimate concern to have. On another note, I like to think that hypothetically, the Doomsday Theory could be a jab to comic books and the typical shonen battle stories. The first generation starts off simple, but as time goes on, we creep to multiverse level threats and potentially gods. And when we reach that stage, where else can we go except for wiping the slate clean for better or for worse? So those are the pros for the training course itself, but I still have one more pro to go over, and it's the aftermath. This moment focuses on Aoyama's sudden interest in Deku, which made the internet explode when this panel was shown to the world. A lot of fans, myself included, thought that Aoyama was secretly the UA traitor the whole time. Someone with a powerful quirk and concept who wants attention that could provide a devastating plot twist. The stars this time seemed to align with Aoyama. However, things changed at the end where Aoyama simply wanted to bond with Deku since their quirks are similar. Similar as in they both provide a physical strain to their users, while also Aoyama wants to look after Deku since he is a fellow classmate. I said it at the start and I'm saying it again. The bonds these students have with each other are fantastic. I never would have gotten the notion that Deku and Aoyama could bond over something, but the story found a way. Unfortunately, there were a couple cons. First off, you might have noticed that I left Cammy out of the whole praise, and that's because I didn't find anything exactly likable about her character. I mean, I felt bad that she was targeted by Toga, but there wasn't anything else that made me connect with her. She was like a bland plank of wood that was hanging out with more artistic planks of wood that at times would be on fire. Second, I didn't really like this leader of the kids. I mean, we got Bakugo's development from it, but this boss baby does not seem like a kid. I'm willing to suspend my disbelief in a world where a guy named Best Genius could be a very interesting character with a very interesting power. However, I can't believe that this child exists with his mannerisms and dialogue. I would rather see this kid be cocky than have this secret IQ and understanding of heroic philosophies. Also, Meat Boy's here, and he has a lot of screen time. I got nothing else. I just don't like him. And that honestly was everything I could think of. This was a small arc, but it was surprisingly full of character work, good humor, and added a sizable chunk of world building. I'm glad I reread this arc because I can happily admit that I was wrong about doubting it before. If you had that same doubt that I did, I would say give this arc another shot. I thought it was well worth the time. And speaking of time, I'm ending it here. Next time we'll be going over the UA School Festival arc, and I'm looking forward to reading that arc again as well. I want to give a shout out to Walken since he inspired me to do this whole series in the first place, so be sure to subscribe to him if you have not already. If you are new to my videos, I recommend you check out my other collaborations with this man, and then subscribe to him. He is worth the attention and more. Until next time, mates, I hope everything in life until then is a bit more gentle.